It's 1:30. I'd like to call the April 1st, 2014 meeting of the Traffic and Transportation Commission to order. We'll have roll call. Commissioner Witcher.
Here, sir.
Commissioner Littlefield.
Here, sir.
Commissioner Hale.
Here, sir.
Commissioner Schuline.
Here.
We have Commissioner White. Present. I'd like to have it on record that Mr. White has gone and done his oath in the back, so he is a traffic commissioner ready to go. Commissioner Jenkins. Commissioner George, not here yet, and Commissioner Yonkel.
Here.
All right, we do have a quorum. Okay, can I have a motion concerning the minutes of the March 17, 2014 meeting?
There's a correction I'd like to note. Correction is on page 3 of the minutes. It's under number 7, the next to the last paragraph. It states Commissioner Hale in 2 places, and it should be Commissioner Kula.
Okay, do you make a motion to approve with those changes?
Yes.
Okay, we have a motion to approve the minutes with 2 name changes on that one mentioned paragraph from Commissioner Jenkins. Do we have a second? And we have a second by Commissioner Schuline. Do we have any other talk on this item? Okay, we have a motion to approve from Commissioner Jenkins, seconded by Commissioner Schuline. Can I have your votes, please? And item is approved. Okay, we are going now to the report of licensed taxi and wrecker service for January, February, and March.
Good afternoon. Vehicle for hire for the police department. Vehicle for hire report for first quarter of 2014 for January, February, and March. For drivers, under driver's permits, we have 37 new taxi shuttles, driver's permits, 61 renewals, 26 transfers, and 2 duplicates. Under limousines, we have 17 new ones, 2 renewals, and 0 transfers and duplicates. Carriage licenses, or carriage permits, rather, we have 1 new one and 1 renewal. Pedicabs, we have 9 new driver permits, 1 renewal, and 2 transfers. For some reason, there appeared to be an increase in limousines for driver's permits. Don't know why. It appears that the majority of them went to, appeared to be to Paris limousines. There was also an increase in pedicabs. I imagine that is because of the 3 new pedicab companies that came online last quarter. That was OK Pedicab, Thunder Up, and Thunder Thighs. As far as vehicle inspections, we have 48 taxi and shuttles that passed inspections, 9 that failed, 1 limousine inspection that passed and 0 failed. We had 1 carriage that passed and 0 failed, 0 pedicabs and 1 failed. There should be a very big increase next quarter because it's time for our annual renewals under all these inspections for the pedicabs and shuttles, so everyone's going to come online then. The carriages and pedicabs will be expiring in May, and then the vehicles will expire in June. Okay. Under enforcement actions for taxis and shuttles, we have 9 complaints, 7 investigations, and 2 field inspections, and also 4 issued citations. For limousines, we have 0 complaints altogether. on carriages the same way, and also on the pedicabs the same way. The complaints under the taxis is kind of a little deceiving. Appears to be a little bit of an increase, but the majority of those appear to be like policy violations, where people were just complaining that it just took too long for their taxi cab to show up, or once they were there, we had one instance where a taxi cab driver just, even though he called the customer and told him he was outside, the customer was kind of intimidated to come outside, and the taxi cab driver had refused to come inside. But he eventually did come inside, so that was resolved. However, during that, also the same quarter, we did have one major complaint that was investigated as far as the ASC mechanics. Under master technicians, there was a complaint filed that many of the companies were not using certified master technicians. We did find that to be true, and approximately 1/3 of the 600 cars that we inspected last year fell into that category, that were inspected by non-certified master technicians. During that complaint, I think most of those were mainly just some misunderstandings on all parties, whether it was the drivers, companies, and some of the mechanics. Some of the mechanics said they had been doing inspections the entire time, so they felt they could still do it. Some of the companies, I think, were misunderstanding the ASC certification, where they didn't know there was a difference between a master technician and just a regular mechanic. And then there was a few that went to car dealerships where they assumed these gentlemen were master technicians, and some of them actually had master technicians. However, it was for specialties such as Nissan or Honda or GMC, not actually ASC. We did get that resolved, and starting next month, we're going to do our annual inspection, so everyone will have their certifications from that's required. We'll have their master technicians, and it will accompany how we resolved it is every inspection that requires a master technician will have that mechanic's certification in hand. And that'll be something that we'll take a look at for the duration until something changes otherwise. So we did resolve that problem. We're still having a refusal. The only other major complaint we have is we're still having a refusal at the airport, which this one was kind of odd to say, as where a driver actually kind of solicited a customer to come. She went back into the airport, came back with like approximately 6 or 7 other people. Then he refused. I go, but they got a ride right then and there because they were originally scheduled for another company as well. So that one was kind of, then the only other ones that were unsustained were some of the more minor ones. We still have people smoking in cabs. We didn't issue any citations on that because we didn't have enough information, and just small infractions that we couldn't sustain. So, unless you have any questions, that's the end of our report.
Okay, does anybody up here have any questions? Just to go over, you talking to 9 taxis failed their inspection, anything major of those inspections?
No, it's pretty much some of the same standard stuff, tag lights being out, parking brakes, and that's something else that we're trying to hope that it would get resolved during our inspections. We issued it out to a notice to all the companies, or will be issuing out to all the companies, the most common failures, to hopefully get those corrected before inspections come up.
Okay, and then the second thing was the 4 citations.
One of those was the refusal, where one driver just signed on the other because of the airport, and then the other ones were for drivers having expired permits.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, anybody else, last chance? All right, thank you very much for your time and for your work. Appreciate everything you do. Okay, item 4, the consent docket. Anybody here to speak against an item on the consent docket? Okay, can we have a motion concerning the consent docket?
I move to approve.
We have a motion to approve the consent docket by Commissioner Witcher. Second. Seconded by Commissioner Littlefield. Any discussion on the consent docket? Okay, we have a motion to approve from Commissioner Witcher, item 4A, item 4, the whole consent docket, and seconded by Commissioner Littlefield. Can I have your votes, please? All right, item is approved. Okay, items for individual consideration. Item 5A, Stuart Chai, PE, Traffic Management Division. Consider a recommendation to the Oklahoma City Council on an ordinance relating to motor vehicles and traffic, amend Chapter 32 of the Oklahoma City Municipal Code 2010 by amending Section 32-329 of Article 10 by deleting the reference to the maximum number of parking spaces adjacent to private property reserved for the physically disabled that the Traffic and Transportation Commission may recommend for the City Council's consideration, and amending Section 32-342 of Article 10 by deleting the reference to the maximum number of parking spaces adjacent to government office buildings reserved for the physically disabled that the Traffic and Transportation Commission may recommend for the City Council's consideration. Anybody here to speak on item 5A?
I think that would probably be me.
Well, you can speak on it and give us your staff input.
All right. All right. What you're really looking at is a change to the ordinances right now adjacent to both private property and to government buildings. The Commission is only able to recommend for the Council's consideration up to 2 parking spaces that can be set aside for use by people bearing, properly marked vehicles, indicate, with using either a state-issued window hanger or state-issued plate, indicating that, the vehicle is operated by or for a person with physical disabilities. There are a number of locations in the downtown area that were left in the following Project 180 that have actually got more than that number of spaces adjacent to them. I mean, case in point is the Oklahoma City Museum of Art, which has got 7 spaces set aside for it. There's one other location in the city that is allowed to have more than 2 spaces, and that's the federal building over at 6th and Hudson, which has got a maximum limitation of 5. What the ordinance that you're seeing before you is, what it does is it eliminates the cap on that number of 2 spaces, which was first introduced into the city's codes in 1978, which is years in advance of the Americans with Disabilities Act, which came out in 1990. What this will allow you to do is, under special circumstances, and if you've got an applicant that can demonstrate that they've got a need for more than 2 spaces adjacent to either public or private property, it will give you the ability to hear them out, and if there's justification in your mind that having more spaces than just the standard 2 that are currently considerable would make sense at a location like that. It just gives you that flexibility. And like I said, we've got examples in the downtown area right now. We've got 7 adjacent to the Museum of Art, and if you look over at the Civic Center in Bicentennial Park, you've got 4 on both sides. There's 4 on Colcord and there's 4 on Couch. So we're at a point where we just need to update our municipal codes to reflect that there may be cases across the city where having the ability to look at and recommend approval of more than 2 spaces would be appropriate, which is the ordinance presented for your consideration.
Okay, do we have a motion concerning item 5A? Oh, well, please. Ma'am, after you're done talking, please fill out one of the forms. Let me have your name and your address, and you have up to 5 minutes.
I'm Jane Jenkins. I live at 220 Northwest 19th Street, and I just had a couple of questions for Stuart. Stuart, if they grant, let's say, 4 to 5 spaces, is there any way to come back and decrease those number of spaces, or is that pretty much set in? Like if we looked and determined that the 7 spaces, for example, at the Museum of Art were not being utilized by qualified patrons, during business hours, would there be a way to come back to the Traffic Commission and ask to reduce those spaces?
Oh, of course.
I mean,
yeah.
If you don't put a cap on it, then can
Right.
we come back at some point and say, let's not do this?
Right. Well, there may be changes in land uses, too. There might be, like, say a small private medical facility that specializes in physical therapy.
Mm-hmm.
They may move out, or they may expand it, go to a different location, in which case, there probably come a point in time where those spaces can probably be, de-designated.
Okay. So
Now, there is one thing, though. On a parallel parking space, the new standards for ADA spaces requires like a deep inset adjacent to the space. But that's not to say that its use couldn't be changed in the future to a regular.
And would that process be just to come back to this body and then go to council? We wouldn't have to go through another, like ADA board or disabilities board to ask for those spaces to be
No, because-
de-designated and such as that?
No, because the hearing process for either adding or removing such spaces goes to the Traffic and Transportation Commission, which then makes a recommendation to the City Council.
Okay.
And the City Council enacts ordinances which, designate the spaces ultimately.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, anybody else for 5A? Okay, can I have a motion concerning 5A, please?
Move to approve.
We have a motion
making
to
the
approve.
recommendation.
I'm sorry?
I move to approve making the recommendation to council.
Okay, we have a motion to approve item 5A from Commissioner Witcher,
Second.
and we have a second from Commissioner Jenkins. Any discussion from up here? Okay, we have a motion to approve item 5A from Commissioner Witcher, seconded by Commissioner Jenkins. Can I have your votes, please? All right, item is approved. Item 5B, Pete Parker, Weston Heights Public Schools, Oklahoma City, Oklahoma 73179, to consider a request for the establishment of a school zone on South Council Road from Southwest 15th Street to approximately 1,000 feet south of the south curb line of Southwest 15th Street. We have two people that have signed up. Who'd like to go first? I've got a third one? Okay, just make sure. Okay, just while they're talking, you can come fill out the form. Okay, who would like to go first?
I'll go first. I'm Eddie Wood with Western Heights.
Okay, sir, if I could have your name, your address, and you have up to 5 minutes.
Okay, it's Eddie Wood, 8401 Southwest 44th Street, Oklahoma City, 73179. I'm here with Western Heights. We've been working with Mr. Chai on getting some flashing school zone lights in front of Bridgestone Elementary. And that school, when it was built, by definition, was a protected school site because it was fenced all the way around. Due to the location of that school, it sits on the corner of Southwest 15th and Council. In the packet I give you, there's a picture that shows an arrow pointing where the school is at, and you can see all the commercial traffic at that intersection. Because the sanitary landfill is on 15th and all the commercial trucking, that pretty much 24 hours a day there's commercial trucking up and down Council Road. And the current speed limit is 45, but the traffic's doing 55 to 60 down Council. And our buses have to enter and exit onto Council Road from the school at two different entrances. One entrance sits right at 15th, maybe 50 feet from the 15th. So we're having a terrible problem getting buses in and out during the day. And then I've addressed some of the issues here. The accidents at that intersection, in a 3-year period, there's been 66 accidents at that intersection. That's all I have.
All right, thank you, ma'am. If I could have your name and your address, and you have up to 5 minutes.
Jennifer Colvin, 8401 Southwest 44th Street in Oklahoma City. I'm the principal at Bridgestone Intermediate School, and I just want to speak to you about our kids and our parents and their concern about, and even our staff, about entering and exiting during the school day, before the school day, after the school day. We've had a considerable number of incidents where parents and teachers have been involved in incidents, and we want to keep them safe. I've had parents asking me, can we get school zones? Why don't we have school zones? A school zone out in front of our school. So that's why I'm here, is to let you know that parents and our kids and also our staff would like you to consider putting a school zone in front of the school.
All right, thank you. Sir, and if I have your name, address, and you have up to 5 minutes.
I'm Joe Kitchen, Superintendent of Western Heights Schools, and 8401 Southwest 44th. And I appreciate the Commission listening to our request, considering it. It's about safety, and I'm sure that you all understand from our principal and Mr. Wood that we're concerned about the entry of students in and out of that area, and so we heartily recommend that you take action to establish the school zone. And appreciate your consideration. The city folks have been great in considering this for us, and we look forward to moving on. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Anybody else wish to speak on item 5B? Okay, may we have staff input, please?
Okay, well, I'll just do a recap. As Mr. Wood noted, back in February, the Commission did consider an item that amended the municipal code, which would allow for the Commission to consider school zone requests from schools that met the definition of a protected school site, which has now been deleted from the codes. The passage of that particular ordinance paved the way for having them being able to have their request for a school zone on Council Road considered at this point in time. You've got all the staff comments before you in the report. I'm just going to touch on the recommendations and then answer any questions you may have. The appropriate use of a school zone on an arterial or collector street is to reduce speeds in an area where school-age pedestrians, which are the most inexperienced and vulnerable group of all roadway users, are likely to cross the street on their way to and from school. The practice of reducing speeds at such crossing locations is especially important where crossing guard is present. The ability for a crossing guard to interrupt the movement of a traffic stream traveling at 25 miles per hour is inherently safer for all parties concerned than interrupting the flow of traffic traveling at higher speeds. Staff observed that all students arrive and depart from this school by private vehicles or buses. Action on this matter will be at the discretion of the Commission. Happy to answer any questions you may have.
All right, thank you very much. We have a motion concerning item 5B.
Mr. Chairman, I move we accept the applicant's request.
Okay, we have a motion to approve from Commissioner Schuline. Do we have a second for item 5B? We have a second from Commissioner Jenkins. Okay, do we have any talk on item 5B?
Does a school zone solve the problem here? Does it slow down the traffic enough? I mean, these pictures that were provided today influenced me a bit. This is a lot of commercial traffic. Is there anything more that can be done in those morning drop-off and afternoon pickup times that would make it, that's even better than a school zone? Because I feel like the school zone is saying this is for pedestrian traffic. We don't have a lot of presence of pedestrian traffic, so I'm not sure we're asking for the right remedy. I don't mean to insult what you're saying. I'm just wondering if there's something else that gets to the bullseye here. And maybe the school zone does. So I'm asking for an experienced response here, since I don't have a lot of experience at this.
Well, with respect to some of the pictures you'd seen of the large commercial vehicles, directly across the street from the school is a trucking company, and further to the west on 15th Street there are some as well, and to the east of the site off of 15th Street is a landfill area. So this area has naturally seen a lot of heavy truck traffic, and whether there's a school zone present or not I don't see where it'll have any impact on the number of commercial vehicles that are using Council Road or Southwest 15th Street in the area. I think that's just kind of an ever-present thing until land uses in the area change. I mean, if those businesses were to close and move out and more housing to come in, then yeah, you wouldn't see that amount of truck traffic any longer.
But so the issue is, by having the school zone, vehicles that are either turning into the school or leaving the school will only have to worry about 25-mile-an-hour traffic compared to normal speed traffic, whether it's an 18-wheeler, that kind of stuff. Am I right, ma'am? Please come on. No, please.
Another thing that I didn't mention is that while we don't have neighborhoods around our school, we do have a low socioeconomic situation where sometimes our students end up walking from our elementary schools either on the north side of the highway down by Northwest 10th and Council, and then also by Southwest 44th and Council. We don't encourage them to walk. And every time we see a kid walking, we're trying to figure out what the problem is. But we do have situations where we do have sometimes people walking. That's not an everyday occurrence, but it certainly is something we're concerned about, as well as what you're talking about, slowing the traffic down during school time.
Okay? So, you know, the big concern that they have is being able to leave the enclosed area and only have to worry about 25-mile-an-hour traffic.
Right, and let me just expound on that a little bit. You know, a reduction for the school zone would drop the speed down to 25. That's pretty much our standard. So it'll be going from 45 to 25. The one thing that, when you do that, is it does cause traffic. It closes up the gaps between vehicles. So, I mean, now granted, it's from a driver's comfort standpoint, it's probably less uncomfortable to enter a main street when the thoroughfare is flowing at 25 than it is when they're flowing at 45, especially if there are more larger vehicles mixed into the traffic stream. However, when you reduce that speed limit as vehicles enter that thing, the gaps in between them close up, and so now there are fewer opportunities at certain times through which to make turns. So it's kind of a catch-22 to some degree. And at this particular school, you know, in the absence of a school crossing guard, there's really nothing that's ever going to interrupt traffic in the vicinity of the school driveways themselves.
Okay. Somebody down here?
Kind of a two-part question. I guess the first part is, Stuart, do you know, is the traffic volume any less on 15th than it is on Council? And I'll let you answer that first. Do you have that information?
We don't as a part of this particular study because we didn't have to evaluate the 15th and Council intersection.
Okay.
I imagine the only place where we could get reasonable counts on 15th Street would be to the west of Council, because to the east of Council, 15th Street dead ends into a landfill. It doesn't go all the way through to the east.
The school is on the west side of Council, correct?
School is on the east side.
I'm sorry.
It borders, our property borders, but we're on the east side.
I'm
right
sorry,
on
okay.
15.
So your property borders the landfill almost?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I guess where I was headed is then it doesn't look like there's any opportunity to have the buses go in and out on 15th anyway.
No,
Okay.
and that would have been an issue too. One thing we're continuing to work with the city also, that intersection, the traffic light there does not have left turn lanes, and it is causing problems. That 3-year period, 66 accidents, 90% of those accidents were because no left turn lanes. You've got semis lined up, one's blocking the view, somebody's trying to turn left, they think it's clear behind, they turn left, somebody whips around and hits them. I just saw one a week ago where a semi come around, tore the whole back end off of a Honda. And I live on Southwest 15th, just to the west. The traffic speed limit on 15th Street is 45 from Morgan Road, and then it goes 35. The speed limit going down Council is 45, but you can stand out there any time of the day and they're doing 60. It's just not regulated. And the speed limit is part of our biggest problem. And you can't believe the number of vehicles that run that red light, because they don't want to have to sit through another cycle to make a left turn or go through.
All right.
I'm assuming that this school has 2 points of ingress egress onto Council from the parking lot, or
Yes.
would the range of this, if it's approved, be enough of a range to impact traffic traveling either direction, to slow down in time, to make a difference for the people entering and exiting the school? how wide would the range of the 25-mile-an-hour speed limit zone be?
Actually, the way it's presented is starts from the south curb line of Southwest 15th Street and goes 1,000 feet to the south. It would go to just beyond the southern boundary of the school's driveway. Considering that that Council Road, that there are no view obstructions anywhere up and down the road because it doesn't have very much change in its topography, the school zone flashers will be obvious for quite a ways in advance of the zone.
That's important. And another point that I want to make is that I'm completely impressed with the support from the 300-foot petition requirements. According to what I'm reading, every required petition property owner is in approval of this, and they're mostly businesses. And, those would be the folks that, half-jokingly, would be the ones to be able to get in and out in a hurry. And they're willing to forfeit that 45-mile-an-hour speed limit sign to go to 25 during these hours of the day. So those are my comments. Thank you.
Hold on one second. Yes, sir, did you have something you wanted to add?
I think Mr. Wood hit on the real importance of this issue. At that intersection, and I'm just going to tell you from experience, the right side, if you're going south, remember he said that the entry onto Council is about 50 feet from Southwest 15th Street. Members of the commission, those vehicles that come around there and blindside the traffic could very easily blindside a bus and take the rear end of the bus out. It's that close. I mean, it's 50 feet from the light to the entry where the buses are leaving with children. That right there is, in my view, the real big issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am?
I agree, and I'm also concerned about the safety of children. But I don't want unreal expectations. I live in Oklahoma City, and I go through school zones all the time. A lot of cars never observe a school zone. They go through school zones at 40 miles an hour. And I just don't want you to feel that the sign of the blinking lights are going to make a real difference in how people drive. But I'm completely aware and sympathetic with the situation.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else over here? Yes, sir.
Stuart, are you saying that if we approve this, that the situation could get worse due to the closing of the gaps?
Well, let me qualify how I respond to the term worse. Okay, in the event there was like a broadside collision, because that's probably what would be experienced, because you'd have people, entering or exiting. Well, you might have rear-end collisions as people are slowing to turn into the driveway, and you might have like a broadside collision coming from someone coming out, going across or trying to get on 15th Street. A collision, a broadside collision, and even a rear-end collision would be less severe in the event that the speed limit is reduced. There's no doubt about that, because vehicle speeds are reduced, therefore the amount of energy they're carrying is less. Now, whether or not at peak traffic times it would be easier to get into a school necessarily, that might be kind of another challenge, because if there's, like, say in the morning there's a heavy northbound movement on Council Road, you might have two slow-moving lanes of traffic on Council Road, and if someone is coming from the north southbound, they want to turn into one of the school's driveways, they might have a more difficult time finding a gap to get into. So there's just a trade-off to be made. There's no one perfect solution that will address basically the needs of everyone trying to get through in a timely manner, or being able to get in easily, or get in and out easily from the school site.
Okay. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
Yes, I actually own number 14 Kiko, which is K-E-C-O, by the way, and CJW building. So I can just vouch for the fact that there is a tremendous amount of safety hazards at that particular intersection. But I can also understand that, as Commissioner Yokel says, that possibly this may not solve the issue. And of course, you're talking about the left turn lanes. And I guess I would just have a observation up until, even with a 25-mile-an-hour protected school zone, I think you might think strongly about using 29th and staying off of 15th with the buses. Because it is, you know, I mean, if you just go around the horn, you know, you'd be a lot safer, potentially. Sure.
We don't have a choice. We don't have a choice on the buses because we have to go to Northwest 10th and Council.
Oh.
So we're going from north side back.
But you were talking about, do you make the turn at 15th and Council then with the buses? Or
We come straight down
just Council?
and turn into the school site.
Oh, okay. But you're not turning from 15th
No.
and Council, that particular intersection?
No.
Yeah, because like you well have said, that if you're trying to make left-hand turns at that intersection, that is a very dangerous proposition.
And I also say, we are working with the city. We have a second petition, and we're working with Waste Management, who owns the landfill. They're willing to put up some money to change that intersection and make left turn lanes. And we're meeting again in May. There's going to be a resurfacing project of Council Road in May with a bond project, and they want to incorporate changing that intersection in that bond project. So we're working on that. And with that intersection not having a left turn lane, in the evening rush hours, if I'm in the left turn lane and I've got to turn on 15th, which I live on 15th, if I'm the third car back, I have to wait through 3 cycles of that red light because one car gets to turn. You sit there and wait. You wait till the light starts turning yellow again, then you turn. And the next car, he waits for the whole cycle, then he turns. So one car gets to go each cycle. Until we get that intersection changed, the traffic is still going to be slow, but and what Ms. Jenkins referred to as slowing, you know, the school zone, people are going to speed through school zones. At least that would get us down to 40 instead of being at 60.
Well, that's really good to hear that there's work being done to redesign that whole thing. And so we do look forward to seeing that effort. Okay, anybody else have anything, ma'am?
I think my last question, is there any approved signage out there that's been in a marketplace somewhere that would say during those peak hours, you know, watch for school buses? I mean, just as an additional point of some messaging to drivers, you know, morning and afternoon pickup and drop-off times. I'm not saying to yield the bus. I mean, not to yield the buses. That could just create a disaster. They have to still make choices on their own, but something that brings attention to the bus traffic or the school traffic where non-school traffic feels the need to pay attention a little closer. That just might be la la land. I might be just dreaming that. That might not be possible.
Is that not what we get with the school zone, with flashing lights on the school zone? Or do you think that there's
No,
something
to
more?
me, and I think a lot of people, school zone says speed. It doesn't, I don't know, maybe it says pay attention, but I'm asking to not leave it up to chance if they're paying attention. But maybe you're right. I don't know, I'm just asking.
Well, hopefully that if this was approved, flashing yellow lights, school zone, speed going down, now the bus drivers and vehicles going in have more time to make choices. And, you know, even if the timing in between cars is now shorter, they just have to be patient and wait till it's a safe time to go. But the concern of that extra 20 miles per hour, you know, hidden would be taken care of. And then the major work on the redesign of all that, which would make that whole area safer. Okay, any other talk on this item? Okay, we have a motion to approve item 5B from Commissioner Schuline, seconded by Commissioner Jenkins. Can I have your votes, please? The item is approved. Okay, item 5C, Chris Fleming, Executive Vice President, Midtown Renaissance, Oklahoma City, Oklahoma 73103, to consider a request for the addition of north and southbound stop signs on North Walker Avenue at Northwest 11th Street to establish all-way stop control. Anybody here to speak on this item? Sir, if I could have your name, your address, you have up to 5 minutes to make sure to fill out a form when you're done.
Chris Fleming, applicant. I was 1225 North Broadway, Suite 200. I was here in case you guys had any questions of us and our request.
Okay, thank you. If you could just fill out the form, and if we have any, we'll get back to you. Okay, can we have staff input, please?
All right. Well, when reviewing this particular case, we used, in this particular type of a business area, we use the manual and uniform traffic control devices warrants for considering all-way stop control. On page 3 of the report, there is a section that discusses the traffic volumes that we use in evaluating these things. There's section C that's got 3 parts under it. The first part addresses the traffic volume on the main road, and in a case like this, we'd be looking at traffic volumes, which is a total of both approaches, in this particular case on Walker Avenue, having greater than 300 vehicles per hour, and it's an 8-hour warrant, so you're looking at having over 300 vehicles on Walker Avenue entering the intersection for at least 8 hours over an ordinary day. We did a count back on Friday of March 28th, and we had 12 hours where we had more than 300. The second thing you have to compare that against is the side street volume, which would be on Northwest 11th Street. It's supposed to have at least 200 vehicles per hour entering during any of the same 8 hours that occurred on Walker Avenue. Northwest 11th Street carried at least 200 vehicles per hour only 5 hours of the day, so it didn't meet that 8-hour traffic warrant. The third part, C3, addresses the 85th percentile speed, but that's only in cases when you're upward of 40 miles an hour. So obviously, with Walker being posted at 30 and 11th Street being posted at 25, that particular warrant didn't come into consideration. Part D addresses looks at circumstances when you don't meet any of the full traffic volume warrants considered in parts C1 or 2. Even when we looked at the 80% levels of those volumes, it didn't pass any of the manual's consideration criteria when looking at all-way stop control. And finally, the manual notes that multi-way stop control is used where the volume of traffic on the intersecting roads is approximately equal. Our counts found that about 74% of traffic through the intersection enters from Walker, and the remaining 26% comes from Northwest 11th Street. So presently, staff does not have cause to advocate introducing all-way stop control on Walker Avenue at this particular location. There's the Walker Avenue roundabout at 10th Street, which is just about 380 feet to the south, and the next nearest control on Walker is up at Northwest 13th Street, which is controlled by a traffic signal, with all other side streets being controlled by stop signs, which is pretty much the exact same way that the adjacent street over to the east, Hudson Avenue, is regulated. Hudson Avenue has the right-of-way in that, and all the minor side streets are stop controlled. So at this point in time, we don't have any cause to recommend approval, so we'll just leave that action is at the discretion of the commission.
Okay, do we have a motion concerning item 5C?
Mr. Chairman, I realize that while the metrics may not support establishment of all-way stop control at this time, I know the staff does point out that at some point in the future, we may want to consider that. And with the dramatic growth in this area and the significant investment by the Midtown Renaissance and other partners in this area, I really think it would be a good idea. And I'd recommend that we accept the applicant's request to install all-way stop control.
So we have a motion to approve item 5C from Commissioner Schuline. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second from Commissioner Littlefield. Do we have any discussion up here on the show?
Okay. Mr. Fleming, the purpose, I gather, then, is for pedestrian access is your development the new facility that's on the northeast corner of 11th and Walker?
We are involved in 3 corners of that intersection, and basically, although people do not currently use a crosswalk to cross that street, people cross that street as it is, and I had lunch today at the hotel, at the Ambassador Hotel, and almost got run over by a city bus which would have been kind of ironic considering I was coming here immediately after. But it's really to allow for more, safer jaywalking. Because people are going to cross the street, and they already do, and they do so really at their own risk. And how it kind of sits right now, and the traffic volume speak to it, there's a lot of volume that goes on Walker compared to the side street, and there's nothing to slow that down, for 3-block stretch. So we're looking at a way to do that and to encourage safe crossing, even though it's maybe not legal crossing.
Okay, and is there a concern on the city side about a stop sign at 11th backing traffic up on the circle? Or is that enough distance that it shouldn't be an issue?
We didn't do any modeling. We could possibly run like a simulation to see what kind of queuing might occur on something like that. I'm sure it would probably back up to some degree, because like I said, you get the majority of your traffic is on Walker Avenue itself, 11th Street not so much, and the purpose of the request is not for vehicular safety so much as it's an opportunity to introduce a break in traffic flow on Walker at 11th Street for pedestrian activity. That's, from what I understand, that's the primary thrust of the request.
That's the nature of my question. Is there a pedestrian count matrix that would, or metric that would constitute the need for a 4-way traffic stop?
There is, because if you look at on the, let me see, it would be on page 3 of your report under, when it talks about minimum traffic volumes under Part C2, it talks about the combined vehicular, pedestrian, and bicycle volume entering the intersection. Well, we didn't have the opportunity to collect actual pedestrian counts during the time we did our study. However, historically, only in probably the busiest portions of like the downtown area and the Bricktown area where you get anywhere close to the pedestrian volume you need in order to meet any of these consideration warrants. Because ordinarily speaking, pedestrian volume, especially in a location like this, is not that heavy at this point in time. In the times that we've been out doing spot checking, because when we go out and work these reports, our data collectors will set road tube counters. That's how we get our vehicle counts. But we'll also be out there taking pictures because we include those in the reports. We'll do on-site investigations just to take a look at it, get a better feel for this. And it was just last week I was out during the lunch hour, because one of the peak traffic times on Walker in this area is during the lunch hour. And then again later on in the evening during not during the 5 o'clock rush hour, but actually later on, like in the 6, 7 o'clock time period. And at the time that I was out, it was fair weather, and there was not what I would call anywhere close to a significant pedestrian volume present at the intersection. Matter of fact, me crossing the intersection probably represented most of the crossings that occurred at the time. But
And so speaking on that, there's 2 things I'd like to bring up. One of those, if you look at the map that's on the screen right now, and there's a parking lot that's immediately south of the Northwest 11th Street label, and that parking lot is employee parking for the restaurants basically along Walker, and so those folks have to cross. So that's inherent volume that's there as well. If you go a block north, that's not shown completely on this. It's sort of shown as a grass lot at the time, but there's under construction right now is a 250-unit Edge apartment, and those folks will be out and about and walking as well. And so it's, again, not maybe as much as for today as it will be for the future. And so should we not address it before it becomes an issue, from our perspective?
Okay. Any other talk from up here? Yes, sir.
What I'm seeing that's interesting here is that this commission has worked very hard with established residential neighborhoods, with R1 properties, with these same concerns. And what I'm imagining here is, well, I'm not imagining it, there's been a tremendous amount of residential growth in this area of town. And what we as a body need to start considering is that that's a new form of residential living where there's traffic, where people need to be able to cross the street, and folks are going to want stop signs. What I'm curious about, and I don't think it's in here, but the petition process for this involved what? There was no petition process?
At this point in time, there's no petition, because it's not really an established neighborhood in any way, shape, or form.
So there is a difference between, okay,
Right.
That's interesting. Thank you.
Okay, ma'am?
Would a yield with a pedestrian focus type thing work here? Or is a stop is about vehicles? Does a stop say stop and watch for people if the focus is pedestrians?
Well, there are things that we can do to highlight the pedestrian crossing locations. I mean, we're about to change out some signs on Northwest 10th Street over by St. Anthony Hospital in between, I think it's between Dewey and Lee. And they've got a mid-block crossing in there, and we'll be installing an MUTCD standard sign that indicates that at this particular crosswalk, the drivers are, yield to pedestrians in the crosswalk. I mean, and that's the way the state law is written, because your drivers have to yield to not necessarily stop, but they have to yield to pedestrians in the crosswalk, whether marked or not. And I mean, it could be, we could bring emphasis to the crossing locations by putting signs up like this at the, at where 11th Street crosses Walker. That's always an opportunity. But, you have to, I guess if you think globally, you have to think in terms that if additional development occurs in this area, I mean, there might be potential requests for putting in basically always stop on Walker at 12th Street and all the other adjacent intersections. So it's very much a balancing act.
Well, I had a concern because I can see the stop sign for cars, but a crosswalk seems to be more appropriate to me because it gives a right-of-way for the pedestrian to go across. But I don't think stop signs say that pedestrians can walk at will. I see it stopping the traffic, but not the pedestrian. You still have to have some right-of-way.
Right, and so kind of how it sits right now is that people cross the street anyhow. I mean, there's no stop sign or crosswalk, and people are crossing the street. And so people are going to cross the street regardless of a crosswalk's presence, is what we've found. And so we're looking to make that cross a little bit safer by car stops. People have to stop and look at both ways. They're not going to get hit by someone going 30, 35 miles an hour because they're going to cross regardless.
Yeah. And the other part going north on Walker and going through the turnabout, will traffic be backed up because you have the turnabout, then you have Park, and then you have 11th Street? And that just seems real close to me.
Yeah, I think, Park is a very lightly traveled street, and it's not even a full four-way intersection. And the circle, as the developer and primary landowner at that intersection, both at 10th Street and 11th Street, we don't have any concern with it and how it would impact anything that we would do. But I see where you're coming from on it for sure.
Okay. Any other talk on this item? Yes, ma'am? If I could have your name and your address again, please? We already have a call.
Jane Jenkins, 220 Northwest 19th. I'm actually wearing two hats when I address you today. One is as the director of Downtown Oklahoma City Incorporated, and the other one is as a resident of that particular area or the neighborhood directly to the north, which is Heritage Hills. And we have seen an extreme, because of the development in that area, which we consider to be a very, very positive thing, there has been an extreme increase in north-south traffic from downtown through up to 23rd and then up through 26th. So I think that slowing down that traffic in some way, even though I know there's a stoplight at 13th and Walker, as it moves north-south from downtown, all the way up, really literally to 50th, is positive at that point. Also, talking about the bigger thing for walkability for downtown and crosswalks and pedestrian safety, I think Chris mentioned that there's going to be an apartment complex built just a block to the north of where this is requested that will have 250-plus apartment units that are there. I think another very important thing that's there is the Ambassador Hotel with 55, 56 rooms. And one of the reasons that people will utilize the Ambassador Hotel is because of its proximity to St. Anthony and to the restaurants that are in the area. So I think we're going to have out-of-town patrons that are going to be using that intersection a lot to walk to access Stella, 1492, or Louis, or Café do Brasil, or to visit family over at St. Anthony that they, don't want to get in the car and walk. That's part of the reason for bringing a hotel to that purpose and to that area, and so that people can walk around to the things that are there. In addition, you see a lot of vacant lots there that I think will become developed, maybe not just as residential, but for other attraction-based businesses. Where, let's see, Fassler Hall and the Dust Bowl are under construction on 10th Street right now. What makes that area so interesting is kind of like Bricktown in its own way. You can park in one place and get to all of these things by walking. I don't see people, once they've parked their car there, moving it to go from the rooftop bar at the Ambassador over to Fassler Hall. They will walk. And I think that that's good. You want that kind of, creating that atmosphere there. And so this just starts, a good way of encouraging that type of walkability within the district. Also, that intersection is home to one of the stations for our Spokies bicycles. And so we do have bicycles that come from that intersection at 11th and Walker often as they try to address that station, which is on the east side of the Plaza Court building. And again, we work to improve cycling and other things, anything that we can do to stop the traffic. I use that intersection a lot, and I'm kind of like Stuart, you don't see a lot of pedestrians there, but part of it is right now, I think it's growing, and part of it is because people aren't really sure where they're supposed to cross. So, thank you.
Okay. Yes, sir.
I have to agree with Commissioner Jenkins. It does make sense that to just do a stop sign when we're trying to encourage pedestrian activity there, it makes sense that it would be a stop sign with a crosswalk. Are the sidewalks conducive? Do the sidewalks have ADA approaches? Could this be a four-way stop with crosswalk?
Well, crosswalks can always be incorporated as an intersection, but typically anymore before we mark something like that, the city would have to make the ADA, the intersection would need to be made ADA compliant, regardless of who bears that responsibility.
And it currently is not?
It's currently not, no.
Okay.
There's more to it than that, yeah, because there aren't ADA accessible walks in all directions.
All directions?
Right.
Okay. So in the absence of that, a stop sign would be the first reasonable step. Thank you.
Okay, yes, sir. So if I have your name, your address, you have up to 5 minutes, and make sure you fill out a form when you're done, please.
Very well, thank you. I'm Jeff Irwin. I live at 401 Northwest 18th Street in Oklahoma City. I'm the manager of the Ambassador Hotel at this intersection. We've been open about a month and have seen a real steady increase in business already, but feel that we're going to be a tremendous partner for this neighborhood and will provide some of that business to those restaurants across the street. And I think that when you talk about the current volume, it's very sporadic. It could be at 8 o'clock in the morning when people are going out of our building. It could be at 10 o'clock at night when people are coming to us. It could be at 5 o'clock in the afternoon or 6 when people are going out to dinner. So anywhere from, at a peak day or a peak time, anywhere from 200 to 300 people could be moving through that intersection based on our business levels.
All right, thank you very much. Hey, any other talk on this item? Okay, we have a motion to approve item 5C from Commissioner Schuline, seconded by Commissioner Littlefield. Can I have your votes, please? Item is approved. Okay, item 5D, Mr. Brandon Kuhn, Boots Zollers, Inc., Oklahoma City, Oklahoma 73116, and Traffic Management Division to consider a request to, 1, change the speed limit on Northwest 164th Street between North Rockwell Avenue and North MacArthur Boulevard from 50 miles per hour to 45 miles per hour. 2, change the speed limit on Northwest 164th Street between North County Line Road and North Rockwell Avenue from 50 miles per hour to 45 miles per hour. And 3, change the speed limit on Northwest 164th Street between North MacArthur Boulevard and North Portland Avenue from 50 miles per hour to 45 miles per hour. Anybody here to speak on item 5D?
Mr. Chairman, my name is Brian Kuhn with Hewitt Zollers, 2832 West Wilshire, Oklahoma City 73116, and I'll fill out one of your
And you have up to 5 minutes. Thank you,
Great.
sir.
We are the applicant. We are civil engineers, do a lot of residential subdivisions. We had an application in for a subdivision called Waterwood, which is south of 164th, immediately west of MacArthur. Well, immediately, it's probably a quarter mile to the west. Site distance, we were not able to meet site distance requirements because it's currently a speed limit of 50. We could meet it when we go to 45. So when we dealt with the traffic department with Mr. Chai and Richard McCubbin also, as we progressed, they realized there was about a 5-mile stretch that there are subdivisions all the way up and down Northwest 164th that this would benefit a lot of them between County Line and Portland. Again, there's a school, Deer Creek Elementary School on 164th near Meridian. So our application for a small part turned into a large application by them for 5 miles worth, and I'll be glad to answer any questions if you have any.
Thank you very much. Anybody else speak? Ms. Chai, input, please.
Okay, as Mr. Kuhn noted, we're kind of partnering in the application. His portion is part 1 of the request, which addresses the speed limit change between MacArthur and Rockwell, and Traffic Management has submitted similar requests to alter the speed limit to 45 to the miles to the west and to the east of that particular section. The resulting change will be a consistent 45-mile-an-hour speed zone, essentially across the northwestern portion of the city. We did it when we did site distance inspections at a few locations along the route. You'll notice on page 11 of your report, we found a couple of different locations that had areas where existing intersections didn't meet our site distance requirements based on the posted 50-mile-an-hour limit. So in order to establish a consistent 45-mile-an-hour speed zone in this somewhat urbanizing portion of the city, we're recommending a speed limit change as presented.
All right, thank you. Could I have a motion concerning item 5D?
I'll move approval.
We have a motion to approve from Commissioner Witcher,
Second.
and we have a second from Commissioner Yonkel. Do we have any talk on this item? Okay, we have a motion to approve item 5D from Commissioner Witcher, seconded by Commissioner Yonkel. Can I have your votes, please? Item is approved. All right. Comments from citizens? Anybody else want to speak? Okay, reports and other items from traffic commissioners. Start over here, number 1, Mr. Witcher.
I have nothing to report, sir.
Okay, Commissioner Littlefield.
Good, that leaves me more time.
Oh, you have up to 5 minutes to speak.
I'll make it quick. The Traffic Calming Committee met last month, and we decided a couple of things. One thing that we decided would be a really good idea would be to go back to a couple of the more interesting neighborhood traffic speeding issues where we approved stop signs and now do a traffic count and see if those had any kind of impact at all, and if they did, what they were. We thought that that was a good idea. And we continue to discuss new ideas. We're hopefully maybe this month we'll have some report from what the traffic feedback devices did on 56th Street. But we continue to march on. We're meeting again today. One of the more interesting things that I noted in this Traffic Calming Committee work was a little trip up Broadway today through the new parking configuration, and I was so impressed with how that visually changes that corridor and automatically slows you down. It's really fantastic. It was scary. It startled me when I saw it because I wasn't expecting it. That's an example of the things that we're looking at, is trying to see what can be done to change conditions to slow traffic. I met with in the other work, I met with a group of people from 2 neighborhoods that are up in the North Walker Avenue area between 36th Street and 50th Street that have great concern about the impact traffic that's going to be happening when the ODOT project closing the 50th Street Bridge and the realignment of all of that up there on I-235 and I-44 happened. And they have requested if a traffic count can be done, and I'll give you the information of exactly where they're thinking about doing that, to set a base that we can look at today to see where traffic is on Walker through those neighborhoods and how it could negatively be affected when these road changes happen. That was under 5 minutes.
Very good, thank you. Commissioner White.
Nothing to report this month, but I'm working on one for next.
Okay, thank you very much. Also, we want to thank you for serving. Okay. Commissioner Hale.
I do want to acknowledge that I had made a number of requests for the insurance policy for Uber. They have complied with that, and I'm thankful for that. I've had a chance to review it. I do have some concerns. Basically, that the policy which they provided for their drivers only is in effect whenever the ride and the fare are routed through their system, which means that if one of their drivers goes outside of their system for a fare or to share the ride, then there's no coverage. So I did want to bring that to the Commission's attention that, yes, they do have a commercial policy in force, but it is not consistently enforced, only for the rides through their system.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Shulen.
Nothing to report, sir.
Commissioner Jenkins.
I was going to report on Broadway as well. I have traveled there 2 or 3 times since the change has been made to the different parking. And I've traveled in the evening and going to the Thunder game, and the traffic moved very smoothly going in that area and didn't seem to create a problem.
Matt, the traffic went smoothly going southbound into town?
Okay. And Commissioner Yonkel.
Nothing.
Okay. Sir, 1 second. Did you have something else? All right, go ahead.
I can't believe it slipped my mind. I had a guest recently within the past couple of weeks who, uninfluenced by myself, chose to hire Uber to travel from my house downtown to the game and then travel back. And they were charged $17 to get down there, and they were charged $37 to get back. And the guy got lost. But I understand that in the current setup with the taxi services, the rate is fixed.
Well, for the current taxis, correct. And under the Uber business model, it goes by the demand, the different rate structures. And that's all being talked about for the ordinance work.
Thank you.
Okay, Captain, do you have anything?
I just made a note on the council deal. I'll have my motor officers help slope traffic down out there.
Right.
With my experience, I think the school zone will make somewhat of a difference in slowing traffic down. But I will talk to my motor officers and get them out there also. Because I know that area. I live out in the Mustang area, and that is a very heavily congested area with a lot of commercial traffic. So we'll get them slowed down.
Thank you very much. Ma'am?
Nothing to report except we're moving forward with the project that was mentioned earlier with Uber-type companies in the ordinances, and we're actually meeting with a lot of success and trying to get something before y'all very shortly.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Mr. Shire?
Commissioner Yonkel, did you get a chance to speak?
I thought I did.
Yes, I don't have anything.
Okay, all right.
Which was a shock, right?
Yeah. You've got our standard report on you as far as the administratively installed yield or traffic controls and parking restrictions. We've only got one for this month to report on. And as requested at the last meeting by Commissioner Kula, we have an update from Randy Entz, our transportation planner, regarding the city's bicycle safety and education programs, and that's included at the tail end of your agenda. So I'll answer any questions if you've got any.
Basically, what I got out of it is they're just having some funding issues, and they are going to do some press releases and try to get the information out with that kind of...
I read the same.
You read the same, okay. All right, does anybody else have anything else? Okay, can I have a motion to adjourn? Please.
So moved.
We have a motion from Commissioner Witcher, second. Second by Commissioner Jenkins. Let's vote. We can get out of here. All right.